in the wake of COVID and this just rapid adoption of digital solutions in the grocery journey, we felt like the opportunity was upon us. And so, we spent the last few years working hand in hand with a range of retailers and partners in the space to take that data and technology and integrate it into the shopping experience. So
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Retail Perch. And I know I missed the last one. We had a different co-host along with Gary. How did that go, Gary?
Yeah, we had a great time. Courtney did a great job, and is available to fill in anytime you're on an airplane somewhere.
Telling you, I feel threatened. My job seems feeling insecure right now. So like we have a good friend, good buddy on this episode, and I'm gonna miss this one. So anyway, and I know travel season is upon us, Gary.
Yes, it is. It's conference season, right?
Yes,
You
yes.
were away last week. We'll both be at grocery shop because Galen, you're going to be there as well. So we'll all be at grocery shop next week.
Yeah, yeah. This episode's probably coming out after grocery shop. So if you're wondering, you don't go to grocery shop after you hear this episode because it'll be done by then. But here we are back, and we have an exciting guest. I think I've known Galen for a while now. It seems like we've been like conference buddies for a while, right? But Galen, I'll let you introduce yourself. Galen Karlan-Mason and got a great story, great company he's building. But Galen, why don't you go and tell us a little bit about yourself?
awesome. Well, first, thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation with the two of you. My name's Galen, as you mentioned. I'm the CEO and founder of GreenChoice. We are a public benefit company and really think of ourselves as a food intelligence engine built for the grocery industry, working on at the intersection of health and sustainability. So we make the complex world of understanding a food's health and sustainability impacts simple. We work with a range of food retailers, wholesalers, solution providers to make it easy for them to access the data they need to support their shoppers' dietary needs and health goals while they're at the store or home, and guide merchandising and category decisions to support those goals that their shoppers have. So we've been in the space for approaching 7 years now, and it's been a bit of a journey. We may talk about that a little bit today, but yeah, never been more excited about the space and the need.
Awesome, awesome. That's fantastic. I'm sure we'll explore a little bit more about how you actually wound up. These founder stories are always fun and interesting, right? So that's awesome. I mean, obviously, a very important thing you're doing, especially given today's talk. I think, since COVID, there's just been so much talk out there about healthy eating and, uh, habits have changed. GLP-1s are here, right? All kinds of things are happening, and those food habits are changing, right? So it'd be interesting to see what you kind of noticed in the industry. But the question, what inspired you to start Green Choice? I mean, what were you doing before Green Choice, and why did you start it?
Yeah, Green Choice began for me when I was a grad student. I was in Boston and finding it very difficult to grocery shop. I would go into the store with multiple food allergies. I'd have to check every label to make sure it's not going to kill me. I'm then trying to do nutrition math because I want to make healthier choices for myself. And at the same time, I also was learning more and more about the environmental impacts of my food choices and wanting to shop with my vote with my dollars and shop with my values. And doing all of that in the context of a 45-minute trip to the store or a 30-minute trip to the store was just totally overwhelming. And I do a little bit of research on my phone, and I would have a question, I think I'd get it answered, and it would just raise more questions. And so that was really the catalyst for Green Choice, was to say, there's all this data out there, but it's not at your fingertips as a shopper. And if other people are struggling like I'm struggling, then I think there's an opportunity to wrangle all this disparate data and make it easily consumable and accessible to the average American. And mind you, it's important to note, I grew up in a little town in southern Vermont. I had two hippie parents. My dad, the environmental studies professor, who always preached, you got to vote with your dollars. Your daily choices matter, right? Whether that's recycling or shutting the lights off when you leave a room. And then my mom was a therapist who was thinking about food as medicine before that was a buzzword. Was very conscious about what we had at home to eat, was quite strict on that front, but in a healthy relationship to food. She was very mindful about what was in the food and its impact on our mind. And I had that upbringing, and yet still I was struggling to figure out what's what when I was doing grocery shopping as an adult. And so I started to talk to more and more people, and looking at my family, my community around me, so many people facing chronic illness and disease, and just really started to obsess over the opportunity to unlock this information for consumers so that you could make more informed choices and nudge people to healthier choices. And there's so much evidence to show that when people up your diet, this improves so many indicators of health and outcomes. So it started with a simple app. You could scan a food. You'd see an evidence-based food health score from 1 to 100, color-coded traffic light style. You could then see swaps available to you in that store that were higher scoring. And it was all store specific across 14,000 plus zip codes across the country. And then you could plug in your dietary preferences and have those recommendations and your search filtered to those particular preferences. Scaled that to hundreds of thousands of monthly active users. Google named us one of the 3 best apps for good in the US for that work. And the whole time we were wanting to work with retail. The vision was always to take this data and this technology and embed it into the shopping experience, right? But at that time, we were too early, and we knew that. And so we made the decision to go direct to consumer to basically build out the use case, build out the technology while the market caught up to us. And you mentioned COVID, but in the wake of COVID and this just rapid adoption of digital solutions in the grocery journey, we felt like the opportunity was upon us. And so, we spent the last few years working hand in hand with a range of retailers and partners in the space to take that data and technology and integrate it into the shopping experience. So we've now analyzed over 1 million foods and counting across hundreds of different diet, health, and sustainability attributes. We power the Food Green Score, which is this 1 to 100 food health score that covers a few different dimensions of nutritional and health quality for an item. And we can talk more about how we simplify what is generally a complex decision for a consumer. And we integrate into truly omni-channel experience. So we'll integrate into the e-commerce environment, the digital environment, shelf edge for a retailer to make it really easy for their customers to access this information when they're at that point of decision. And that kind of brings us to today.
All right. So using your tools then, you can help guide me as a shopper to gluten-free products, sugar-free products, whatever, right? Across the store. Talk a little bit more about the food score and how that's
Yeah.
generated and sort of what role that serves.
Yeah. So when we're talking about a score, I think there's a couple things that are helpful to anchor. One, there's been a number of systematic reviews of different scoring methodologies, or whether that's numerical or letter-based, a couple of decades. And general consensus is efficacious in driving positive health outcomes when deployed correctly. So that's one note, right? So if you do this right, meaning you make it simple, you message it correctly on shelf or wherever that intervention is happening, it's color coded, it's not hidden away. Like, you can drive real behavior change and positive health outcomes. And a footnote on that, retailer can see a sales lift in product categories and types that matter to them. Second, when we were looking at this space for scores, we felt that they were all pretty limited. Early on, because of the community that I had in Boston of academics, we started working with researchers and academic PhD students on how do you create a comprehensive score that leverages existing science and standards, but doesn't have gaps. So if you only look at nutrition, how are you considering dimensions of food processing that are so deeply tied to chronic illness and health, for example? So
Mhm.
the food green score covers 4 dimensions. An item is assessed for nutritional quality, ingredient processing, ingredient safety, and climate footprint. Each one of those 4 dimensions follows its own industry-based scientific standards, and together they combine to make that food green score. And as
Hmm.
a consumer, if you're interacting with this information, if it's in an app, you can actually click into any one of those 4 dimensions to see why an item got the score it did, and then make your own assessment of what's important to you. It also, whenever deployed on shelf, we always pair it with a QR code that a shopper can scan to see that information as well. So for us, transparency is really critical. And then we let the consumer, you as the shopper, decide what's going to be the thing that moves you depending on that product type and that choice you're making.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I mean, I think Gary, we've been talking about food as medicine for a while, and I think it's it's such a I think it's a problem that everybody recognizes, but I'm wondering if part of the problem is the whole way we label these foods and supply that information to the shopper that makes it so difficult to actually discern, right? What part should the food manufacturers actually play in simplifying that whole decision process?
So,
Yeah.
so I think the labeling certainly has a part of this and a role to play in this, but I think from a consumer perspective, I think it's all the conflicting information that's out there. I mean, you literally can go on social media or news anywhere, right, and find a study that says this about Tylenol, for example, right, to take a recent example out of the news. And then right behind it, there's another study saying, oh, Tylenol's fine to take, right? So I think there's so much conflicting information that I don't know as a lot of consumers know what to do. They know they want to improve eating, eat better foods, etc. But it's
Sure, you're noticing, Gary, but more and more I see ads around how protein rich this food is. Like protein seems to be like the new
oh
magic,
Protein's
yeah,
big.
right?
yeah,
I think protein's
Yeah.
big, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yes,
it's like this cycle that keeps going. And Gary, I've told you, but I was to kind of bring down my A1C to, sub 6, closer to 5.5.
yeah,
And it was some obscene double-digit number before that. And I did it just through
Mm.
diet, right? It's changing in
oh
diet, changing what you eat, watching what you eat, but it took discipline, right? It took
oh, it's not easy.
yeah, and there
It's not.
and I think there's plenty of people who are in the borderline for whom the effort doesn't seem worthwhile. Like, you go tell somebody your A1C is off the charts, you suddenly get a wake-up call and you tend to take more drastic measures
Yes,
about paying attention to what you eat. But somebody who's on a borderline doesn't feel the same sense of urgency and pressure just because the effort to regulate what you're eating and discern
right,
is just so much more. So,
yeah.
question for you is, what do you see the food system, right? If you could wave a magic wand, what would you want it to become?
Yeah. Well, before I answer that, I've got to share something since I think it's highly relevant to what you're speaking about here, which is, one is Shekar, you are already an outlier in the way that you're living your life. I mean, think about the business that you're building, you as a founder, the world of data that you're immersed in. So your ability to tackle that problem independently is I would argue unique, not reflective of the average American. And to Gary, to your point, there is so much overwhelm. There's so much choice. We have the tyranny of choice in our grocery store aisles. I mean, the average store is carrying 30,000 plus SKUs. Even in a small format store, you've got 10,000 plus SKUs. You've got many options in any given product type. And I'll share a couple interesting stats with you that we found on that front. So let's say you step into we did a sample of just in preparation for this call. I wanted to pull some interesting numbers real quick. So we pulled a sample of just over 1,400 nut and seed butters sold across the US, right? within that, their processing score ranges anywhere from 13 to 90s. Okay, the nutrition score anywhere from the tens to the 80s. And this is just a huge range. And when you look at like what is driving this, it's added sugars, salt, hydrogenated oils, highly processed refined oils, a multitude of artificial ingredients and additives, even food coloring, not something you'd necessarily associate with a nut and seed butter. And so on one end of this spectrum, you can have a peanut butter that is just extremely processed. And the other side, you can have one with a single ingredient, and that's peanuts. And we recognize, like I'm the first to recognize that as a shopper, you go in there, you might not want that one with just peanuts. It might not meet the taste profile your kids are looking for, right? But you have a host of options, and discerning that is not easy at all. And that's just one example, right? Take for another example, you go into frozen pizza. Maybe you don't think of that as being the healthiest category, but when we look at their total green score, you got to range from anywhere from 14 to 89 on that shelf,
Right. Wow. Wow. And then
which
you're
is
just told, well, peanut butter is good for you, and you don't know which one is good for you, right? Or
exactly.
whatever, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
And you're
that's
told
right.
frozen pizza is bad for you, and that's like, and that's not necessarily true either,
True
right?
either. Right.
There's a range of choices that you as a shopper can make in any one of these categories, and the
Yeah. Right.
opportunity to make trades is prevalent when you have this information available to you. So I just wanted to share those stats because I thought they're
Yeah.
interesting and
No, that
illustrate what
is
we're talking about.
fascinating. And I
The
think,
other
yeah, go ahead. No, no,
Just the only other thing I'll note is that Deloitte recently published a study. They had surveyed a couple thousand respondents across demographics, psychographics, and income in the US. Two fascinating stats stood out to me. One, among those with a chronic condition, 73% want to use food to manage their health as much as possible. People without chronic conditions, 82% prefer to use food to manage their health. So this in June or July of this year. So these are really fresh stats, but indicative of this desire that you speak about, right? Now bridging that desire to action is where we do our work.
Yeah, and I think, absolutely valuable role, right, to help simplify and help shoppers, consumers understand as much as possible what they're buying, and help them find what they ultimately want. I think that there's another side to this too that enters into it around, the whole healthcare industry, right? I mean, today, sadly, my experience and talking to a lot of other people, you go to the personal example, right? I went to the doctor last summer for my annual, and my cholesterol was trending the wrong way, right? Wanted to put me on statins right away, right? As opposed to, hey, try modifying your diet. There was nothing about that. And this was a younger doctor. It wasn't, I think would be maybe more attuned to, hey, instead of just taking a pill or a drug, you can affect your health by what you eat.
Yeah,
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 100%, Gary. And I think there's,
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, like so much can be done with eating. We're the only species on Earth that needs to be actually told what we can and cannot eat,
Yeah,
right? Which is kind of crazy if you think about it. It should be
yeah,
nature to be able to identify, but the amount of abstraction that happens between food production and food distribution, layers of complexity to make this decision. So, if you had a magic wand, again, I'll go back to the question, and
yeah.
you could wave it,
Sure.
what would be the one systemic change, the challenge in the US food system that you like to solve?
You know, what this is a tough question in that it's a complex system. But if I was to change one thing, it would probably be food supply. It'd be what's actually on the shelves. The technology that we have today, the ability that we have today to create incredible flavors and textures from very simple ingredients is prolific. And I do believe, big companies and big brands die slowly, right? They take, in some cases, decades to die. And
Mm.
I think we're seeing the CPG industry see some of these brands dying, and then you can see it through M&A and divestitures. And
Yeah.
I it's not happening at the rate that I'd like to see as someone who wants to see a healthier America and a healthier planet. That said, I am just blown away every time I go to one of these trade shows and get to sample some of what is being done. The innovation is really profound. Some of these young entrepreneurs coming in and just launching products that are just one, two, three ingredients, truly like whole food ingredients, and they're recreating textures and flavors that you and I would generally associate with not so healthy snack or option. So to me, it's what's on the shelf, simplifying the center of the store, not necessarily in terms of choice, but in terms of what's in these items.
Yeah.
And then we could talk more about food as medicine, but the opportunity for food scripts, for food RX, and to be able to act proactively and provide preventative care by enabling people to buy healthful foods. Instacart is publishing some really fascinating numbers here to just show the power of these food benefit cards at reversing chronic conditions. And it's really, really exciting stuff. Obviously, we need the incentive. The incentives are aligned. It's just whether we can get them the ROI case to make sense in the time horizon that we need, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say that the incentives are becoming aligned, right? We see what are we up to? I think it's 6 or 8 different states now have applied for waivers to disallow the purchase of, sugared soda, candy, et cetera, right, using SNAP
Yeah.
benefits. We're probably going to see more and more of that, which, I think makes sense, right? I remember I released an article not too long ago about, it makes no sense from the perspective on one hand, we, the taxpayers, are funding food purchases, right, through SNAP and so on. On the other hand, we're footing the bill for the healthcare costs that are, issues caused by a lot of those foods. So I think hopefully some rationalization is coming to that.
Vicious circle, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
got a not so fun stat on that. The last number I've seen is 54% of the 380 plus $1 billion in government healthcare spending is to treat diet related chronic conditions.
Yeah.
54%.
Yeah.
Basically, what we're just saying is these are all preventable completely, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And as a retailer, which is a space that obviously all of us on this conversation are very passionate about, as a retailer, there's a huge business opportunity here. When you have over 60% of the US has a diet-related chronic disease, 42% is obese, and they are, wanting to manage some of these conditions with food, the opportunity to play matchmaker, to be that trusted companion and guide to healthful foods in your store, is pretty powerful.
So I fully agree with you, but there's a conflict, right, that comes in that isn't often talked about, in that food retailers are very much dependent upon the marketing funds, trade promotion funds, shopper marketing funds, et
Mm,
cetera, they get from the big brands. Without those funds, 99% of retailers would not be profitable. And so they have a conflict, right? They may want to help promote healthier foods and help provide that kind of guidance to shoppers. On the other hand, they're dependent upon Coca-Cola and Frito-Lay and whatever else brand to help fund their bottom line.
Yeah.
so tricky, and I think that's why I go back to my oversimplified answer of saying food supply is, I get excited when I see M&A in this space by these larger CPGs for that very reason, right? It means distribution, it means trade dollars can now go to a better for you option.
Yeah. And one of the things, Gary, that is going slightly off topic here, but I think I was reading a report in terms of how people are using ChatGPT, right? And one of the big use cases is for diet, to understand
Yes.
health,
Mm.
answer
Yeah.
questions around health, right? And how do you see that accelerating this whole space here, Galen? I'm sure. I mean, a few years ago, this wasn't even a thing, right? And but now I can go in and talk to ChatGPT and ask a question about, hey, this is what I'm eating. What do you think? What's the breakdown? And it gives me quick answers. So how do you see that kind of accelerating the pace at which people are make able to simplify their choices, right? Like they don't have
Yeah,
to go research. Before, you'd have to go search on Google, go through 50 websites,
Right.
and then figure out which one's the right answer. But now you get the answer. How does that change this whole process, you think?
I think there's a very exciting opportunity there. I think shoppers have to be really careful about the information they're getting from an LLM from any of these chat services. I think I heard the other day, don't quote me on this, but something like 50% of GPT citations are Wikipedia and Reddit. So, when I think there's what we're excited about is a shift in innovation that's now happening to meet consumers' needs, leveraging these LLMs. So, we have a large influx these days of developers, of technology companies, of healthcare companies that now have, the resources, thanks to some of these LLMs, to be able to go invest in building an application to meet some chronically ill population's needs, or to meet their members' needs in the store and build their own food scanner or their own search or filtering or recommendation engine. And so, but they need the right data, because we all know garbage in, garbage out. So that's where GreenChoice comes in being able to provide reliable, vetted food health attribute data to our partners, so that they can then take the power of one of these LLMs and layer that on top of it for a chat experience, or to build a digital experience that leverages that data. But I think right now, and I'm in these chat services all the time, so I'm the first to recognize the power of them. But I would be wary of getting your health advice from them.
Got it. Do you see an opportunity to maybe have a fine-tuned LLM that has been trained on good quality, health attribute data,
Definitely.
right? Like you're a little health assistant, so to say, right? It's been trained on. It's not the yeah. I mean, I see that, Gary, coming out of this retail club event that I was at last week. I think there is going to be a flood of fine-tuned and specialized LLMs and SLMs
Yeah.
coming out, all right,
Yeah.
which are going to tackle specific things that have been trained and fine-tuned on more
Mm,
reliable, maybe even proprietary data that these foundation models don't have access to. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah.
I can see that totally
And
happening.
the opportunity for commerce in the chat experience is only getting better. I mean, Perplexity is doing
Yes.
pretty interesting things, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean,
I,
agentic commerce is here one way or the other, right? So I think
yeah,
having an agent that is sitting in your app that you can talk to and say, hey, this is a health related question, fires up access to the right
yeah,
set of data to pull that in.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a small call to action. If you are listening to this, uh, reach out to me. If you're listening to this and this is something you're interested in doing, we'd be very much interested in supporting it.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to give you a shameless plug at the end, but if you're doing it yourself, why not?
Well, I just mean if you've got an innovator who's really thinking about the chat experience in particular, that's
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that's pretty interesting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Terrific. Yeah. Yeah. So, so tell me, what are the challenges you faced in trying to, because you've been at it for a while. I'm sure that it took
Yeah.
a while for retailers to understand. Was when did it go from a nice to have to have? Are you seeing that swing happening? Right?
We are. I'm smiling because it has been a long journey, and that it's not always been the case. And so this year we have seen things really shift. I've seen more adoption and demand over the last 9 months than we saw in the 5+ years prior. And I think what we're seeing is a convergence of some really powerful trends. You mentioned GLP-1s earlier. They're expected to, I don't know, depending where you look, 10x by 2030. So the growth is absurd. And this drives demand for new nutrient-dense foods that meet certain attributes, wayfinding in a store or in a digital experience to make finding those foods easier. And mind you, the margins on those GLP-1s are terrible, and any retailer operating a pharmacy can now see basket size shrinking for a GLP-1 customer by upwards of 20%. And so you need to start thinking about your strategy there and how you regain or retain some of that customer lifetime value. Then you've got MAHA and the Make America Healthy Again movement, and not only what they're actually driving in terms of regulatory reform, whether that's the grass rule or pulling certain food coloring or additives out of our food supply, but just the conversation that is being born from that across the political spectrum is more energetic than anything I really have seen in years prior since I started GreenChoice. And so those two things, and then you have this third bullet, which is the regulatory shifts that are actually driving reformulations and new scrutiny of what's in the label or what's behind the label. And so all three of these things converging, at the same time right now is driving for us a lot of new demand and a mentality shift for many retailers where you've had the health arm or the nutrition arm or the RDs within a retail organization kind of shouting to a small room about the power of food as medicine and the power of personalization and supporting health outcomes for the last decade. And now you've got merchandising and category management and the pharmacy teams and the executive suite seeing all of this on a daily basis and engaging in the conversation in a really new way. And so I think what we'll see is how does this all shake down a year, 2 years from now, 4 years from now? I'm not sure, but there are certain undeniable facts, which is adoption of GLP-1s, reform on food production and additives. And these things are driving a need for new transparency that is serving us well.
Right. So going back to GreenChoice and what you do as a company, what services do you offer to retailers? What is it that what does your platform do for retailers?
Yeah, I actually need to make one addendum, one addition to my earlier answer, which is you also have rising chronic illness, and it's never been higher. And despite spending more on healthcare than we ever have, we continue to see, rising comorbidities and rising chronic dietary related disease. And so all these things are converging. So that said, to answer your question around what we serve, think about us as a data technology company that cuts its teeth on taking food, nutrition, and health data and making it readily available to the segment of your customer base or your user base that needs it. And so that can look like a data license and leveraging our attributes with, a la carte, leveraging our scores a la carte, however you'd like, for an internal category, manager to guide purchasing decisions or merchandising decisions and analytics to, your shoppers being able to find vegan, minimally processed foods without added sugars on the shelf. And so one piece of our business is our data arm and really providing data licenses and data integrations. And then the second piece is a suite of SaaS products and tools that integrate into the retail experience. So we have a plug and play integration we call healthy shelf labels that ties right into your POS and your shelf tag system to display the most important attributes as well as the food green score and QR codes on shelf, plug and play. We have an integration that displays the food green score and better for you healthy recommendations into a digital environment, plug and play. So your developers don't need to figure out how to code all that up and create an experience that's intuitive, we make that possible in weeks rather than months or years. And then we also power shop by diet tools and apps. So we'll white label an app that allows your shoppers to be able to search or scan foods
Got it.
by their dietary profile. So that's kind of the suite. And it's really about making it easy wherever your customer is to make the choice that they're seeking to make along their health journey, and positioning the retailer as that trusted companion. And then if you're working with retailers, making it easy for you to access this information and support them.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. And how do people find you?
Well, if you want to learn more about GreenChoice, you can just go to greenchoice.co. That's easy. And me, I'm on LinkedIn at Galen Karlan-Mason, and also email me at galen@greenchoice.co.
Cool.
Nice.
Well, I am sure we're going to catch up and meet at all these conferences and continue this conversation here. But Gary, do you have any more questions for?
No, Galen, thank you for joining us today. Great conversation, and I'm sure we will have you back again before too long because this space is moving fast.
Yeah, and it's so
That,
important, right? It is. It
Yes.
is. People have been talking about solving this, and I think there's a. It takes a combined will of the food industry, the pharma industry. I mean, just there's so many players here who are trying to figure out how to optimize their business interests vis-a-vis public health, right? And
Yeah.
it's always a challenge because ultimately, some of these companies are paying our paychecks, right? So it's yeah, it's complex. But I think kudos to you to even try to make a head start in trying to solve this problem. But I'm sure we'll try to get you back on here, Galen. But we're going to see you on the road here shortly. So thank you for being a guest on the Retail Perch, and look out for this episode. I'm sure this will be one that you'll listen to.
thank you both. It was a pleasure, and I'd love to be back when the time's right.
All
Awesome.
right.
Great.
All right.
Thanks.
All right.